Big Value, Big Business Podcast, episode 21.
Welcome to the Big Value, Big Business Podcast with James Lynch, where we talk with today's most successful marketing minds about getting the right message in front of the right people and getting the right people to become your customers for life. And now, your host, James Lynch.
All right, welcome back, my friends, to yet another edition of the Big Value, Big Business Podcast. I am your host, James Lynch. I am really big time super excited about my very special guest today. His name is Mr. Bryan Kramer. Bryan is the president and CEO of Pure Matter at purematter.com, an award-winning global digital agency based in Silicon Valley. Bryan is a social business strategist and the author of the epic marketing book, Human to Human, which talks about there is no more B2B or B2C. They are all human to human. Bryan and his agency have captured over 100 industry awards and accolades, with Bryan landing in the Forbes top 25 list of influencers to follow. I am totally honored and psyched to have him on the show with us today. Let's say hello to Mr. Bryan Kramer. Bryan, hello, and how are you?
I'm doing great. Happy Monday to you. How are you doing?
Fantastic. You're over on the left coast, so it's a little bit earlier for you. I'm working on just after the lunch hour, but I think we're going to make it.
How is the future?
The future, it's so bright I have to wear shades. Is that kind of cliche, or
Well, and it's good news too.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks a lot for coming on the show. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I'm really excited, for you to help us learn just how we can improve our communication and humanize or rehumanize our message. As we compete in this extremely noisy marketplace out there. So, does that sound like a plan?
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, for my listeners, could you give us just a little history about, who Bryan Kramer is, where you came from, how you got your start, and just a little bit about the journey that took you here to where you are today?
Sure. And thank you again for having me on here. I'm I'm one of those people that just really kind of started out the same way I think a lot of us did, where out of school I just wanted to get into advertising or marketing. I think that's a lot of people that are listening here to your podcast. Mm-hmm. And so I worked my way up in the agency world, and I worked in one of the oldest agencies here in Silicon Valley, San Jose. And I got a job out of college working for this agency, Carter Waxman at the time. And my role really at all the agencies that I worked for was to bring the digital revolution and integration to the agency. So it was taking a traditional and newly digital at the time integration and bringing the two together by training, educating, and selling that service into clients for the agency. And that really kind of became my MO, really, or the thing that I became, I think, good at for the next foreseeable future. And it became something that I really worked hard at as well, because it really was a passion of mine. What I studied PR, public relations was my degree, and digital marketing was my passion. I had built sites and websites and all that kind of stuff in college, and then I have such a high passion for marketing, along the whole spectrum of marketing. So bringing that together was just totally exciting to me. And now I'm at the place where I get to practice that every day here at Pure Matter. I had luckily a nice job where I got to help start a company this just before Pure Matter, and that really trained me on the ways to do business and what to how to work through the financial situations that every business needs to work through, and so on, and build people, and so on and so forth. So by the time my partner and I, Courtney Smith, started Pure Matter, I think it's now 12 years ago. we wanted to combine again traditional and digital, and now we've grown into a much more digital agency here, working with enterprise clients like Cisco and IBM and Pitney Bowes and MasterCard and Plantronics and companies like that. So we're really excited, really pinching ourselves right now with the work that we're doing. And I think just along the way, if there's any takeaway, it's just really kind of, learning the ropes and not saying no to anything along the way, because it really helped prime me for what I'm doing here today.
Oh, that's awesome. And thank you for bringing it right up to date. 12 years, huh? I must have come across, I counted 10, but man, you snuck 2 more years up in there. So time flies, I guess, right?
It definitely does. It goes really fast, and being at one job for that long, it seems like it shouldn't be, but I'm still in it to win it kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, you definitely have a vested interest in. I keyed into what you said in the beginning about learning or being part of a startup in the very beginning and learning from the bumps and bruises along the way. It's almost an invaluable, probably an MBA, you know what I mean? Coming out of college and right before starting your own company. So you could kind of learn from the mistakes and learn from the wins. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And, that was during the .com era and the .bomb era. So I saw the up and the down. The smart move that they made, or we all made at the time, was to sell out. We grew it. We were 3 people when it started and 75 people when it finished. And, at that point, it just became a little too large for me. And I like smaller companies to work within myself on a day-to-day basis, although I like working with large companies. But that was the takeaway for me, was just to stay small, stay nimble, and we can accomplish great things together.
Awesome. So what would you consider one of your biggest challenges over the last 12 years? And no doubt over 12 years, you've had a lot of time to take some of your own bumps and bruises and have some good wins. But what would you consider one of the biggest challenges you overcame and were able to turn things around and get Pure Matter back on the right track?
That's a really good question. And I'd say that there's 2 things that come to mind right off the top of my head. And one is that infrastructure is probably the most critical thing before you go to market with anything. Mm-hmm. So often we just, I see companies produce a product and just go for it, rather than concentrating internally and spending the time to get your resources and resource management and financials and all the HR and all the different aspects across the the internal spectrum up and running first. And so really, I think for the last 10 years, we were kind of the best kept secret, because I wanted to, and so did my partner Courtney, wanted to focus so much on, who we were and what we can deliver and what our message is and who our people are and, what does our brand stand for and all those things that you just kind of, you rush through. And maybe 10 years was kind of overdoing it, but we also weren't about ego. That's why we named the company Pure Matter instead of Bryan and Courtney. And, so we really wanted to maintain a Pure Matter atmosphere. And so leading into the second thing, which is, kind of looking at when is it time to grow and how do you grow and what's that next step for you? And it's either grow or die. You've got to disrupt in this time and age. And if you don't disrupt, then you're just not moving forward. And at that point, you probably are going to end up finding something new. So one of the things that we really need to do is just to step out. And that's where I started taking a look at social media and figuring out that I really needed to take Bryan Kramer, my brand, and not in an egotistical way, but in just more of a marketing communications perspective, and knowing that people connect with people, they don't connect with businesses. I needed to take a step up front as the leader and actually get out there and start talking. And so that's what I did. And that was like a big move for not just me, but also for Pure Matter to be able to help support that and understand that, putting people out and evangelizing the company is where it's at. So getting the infrastructure straight and right for up front, and then also stepping out when it's time to become, a leader and actually start saying what you can do as a company is really important as well.
Yeah, I love that. I took a note of a couple things that you said, and a lot of people will say, get minimal viable product out there and just get it out there, rush it, but that you can shoot yourselves in the foot that way. And I don't think 10 years is a long time to start to get out in the front. I mean, you're learning your chops, you're establishing your base, and at the risk of sounding cliche, dude, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. right?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
And I like the you came out with a book and decided to put a face, a human face to the company, and you're becoming an authority and a thought leader. You are, and I'm not even saying you're becoming, because I, ironically, before earlier this morning, I was talking to a friend of mine, and a shout out to Jess at Mind Shuffle Marketing. She said, "You're talking to Bryan Kramer today?" I said, "Yeah." I said, Bryce, I love his book. And totally unrehearsed, totally, this is someone I had no idea that she was following you. But yeah, man, you're doing just that. You're getting out there, and it's awesome.
Thank you. I pinch myself when I hear stuff like that. That's so nice of you to share that with me. Thank you.
Jessica, well, she's going to be a little embarrassed that I called her out on it, but she'll get over it.
Jessica, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, present day, I did take a peek at your dossier, and heavy hitters: Pitney Bowes, IBM, Cisco, Ellen DeGeneres as well.
No, that was a campaign that we did actually as a test, and it wasn't run through. It wasn't a pure banner campaign actually. That although it was. A lot of our team members actually opted into working with Ellen, but the short story is that a friend of mine, DJ Waldo, and I got together, and we got together with our wives. We actually met on social media, and we put together this. We had a conversation. We were all talking, of course, a couple bottles of wine. Really starts to loosen up the thinking a little bit, yeah. And we're talking about how we can make real world relationships on social media, and what does that mean? And how do we get that to get the point across that that's what social is really about? And it's really the extent when you want to look at social media and you want to figure out how do you make real world relationships. What's that process? And so we started talking about how we could use social media to maybe build a real world relationship ourselves. And we were talking about maybe doing it with somebody that's a little more unreachable but social, and that's a whole bunch of people in Hollywood that we came up with. We talked with Justin Timberlake and all kinds of people, and eventually we settled on Ellen DeGeneres because we thought that she could be somebody that we could eventually have lunch with. We weren't trying to get on our show, and we gave and donated money that we earned throughout the whole thing to Feeding America, which was based upon the fact that everybody needs to eat. So we ended up, it lasted for 90 days. It was called 90 Days to Ellen. It's still up at 90daystoellen.com. And we leveraged the crowd. We had thousands of people take part. We had over 100 million impressions. We had assets that people were creating for us and ideas and things coming out that perpetuated the campaign itself into becoming I think it was Content Marketing Campaign of the Year by the Content Marketing Institute, and it got a gold award. And, it just really did well. The one thing that it didn't do is it didn't get a reply at all on any social media from Ellen's camp. They didn't do anything. What we discovered is that sometimes people just push content. They don't engage. They're not really concerned about what people are actually saying out there. And that's what we learned about Ellen and her team, is that they were not engagers. They were simply just pushing things out there. So they weren't about the relationship. So did we succeed in that aspect? Absolutely not. But did we succeed in building real world relationships? Definitely. It set us both, DJ and I, on our career path even more so, because we built all these relationships literally globally around the world with people who were so behind it that they felt like they were a part of it, and they were coming up with the content just as much as we were. So we definitely did that aspect, and it's due justice. So it was good. It was fun.
No, that's and you got to make lemonade out of those lemons, because the lesson learned was, again, there are some people that just don't engage. They just push content, and no matter how you approach or how loud you scream or how many times you scream it, they're just going to ignore and be one way.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. No, that is cool and invaluable. You said people were donating creative and hundreds of millions of impressions. That's awesome. That was an exercise well worth the effort, I don't doubt.
We learned a lot.
Cool. All right, so the book, Human to Human. There is no more B2B or B2C. Now, I did some looking around, and I read some of the critics, Bryan, that they think that I think from what I've heard, they're missing the point, because behind every transaction, B2B, B2C, there is a human being. They're clicking, they're downloading, they're opting in, they're pulling out their wallet. You and I are human to human right now. That's the way we're exchanging. So tell me a little bit, maybe getting back to the subject of the book and some of the points you bring out. I really like what intrigues me is how to be delightfully disruptive. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. There's two sides to being disruptive. There's dark and there's delightful. So being dark, let's start there. There's dark sides to disruption everywhere. Excuse me for a second. So when you look at the different dark sides of disruption, you're really looking at everything from something small that might be annoying to maybe something as big as the NSA that's looking at all of our social records online and tapping into Facebook and LinkedIn and all of our data. So it really spans the gamut of what we think of a negative dark place that we don't like to talk about, and yet we all get angry over. It's that dark side when a pop-up box comes up or your shopping cart online all of a sudden becomes zero, and all that work you just did shopping goes away, and you get fed up with the site and you just don't shop there. It's those little things that can happen that just make you not want to take part in something because of the way that somebody says something and the contextual way that they're saying it. So all these different things play into that dark side. It's the delightful side that I think in our humanity that we need to spend a little more time on. And I cover this in the book where and the reason that I'm talking about this a little bit more is because I ran a test online, and it was the two words I ran against the hashtag thank you and the hashtag fail. And the hashtag fail was mentioned 4 times more than the word thank you. And so if you think about that, just because Twitter's so global, and obviously it's just a short little idea of a dark versus delightful way of representing the information. But that said, when you just look at it on that level, then where there is a lot of negativity online, this social gives us a lot of ways to talk about things that are challenging for us, whether it's a bad plane ride or bad hotel room or whatever it is. We're all complainers, unfortunately. And so, as brands start to compete with that, they really need to create unexpected, delightful situations that are competing with the dark side, that are competing with that hashtag fail that represents a place where people can be delighted. And I think that that's our biggest challenge, and that's the challenge of every brand, is to be delightful even more so today than they ever have been, because social media gives them the ability to communicate their negativity.
I love it. Was it 4-1 fail to?
I think, it was either 3-1 or 4-1, but it was definitely over the top.
That is that's amazing. I'm actually surprised, but that's good context for our conversation. So you mentioned I like to kind of grab like a gold nugget. If we were to take my audience of entrepreneurs, small business owners, consultants. What would be the number one takeaway for them that they can put into their social media practice now on the same thought of being delightfully disruptive, or to be the contributor of the thank you and help globally tilt that unbalance? Yeah,
again, that's a good question, because how do you maintain positivity in a disruptive, oftentimes negative or dark place, like I said before, where people are the word fail is resonating loudly. I think that's one, being just delightfully and unexpectedly disruptive is one way. The other way is really paying attention to what creates things or situations that people really want to share. And this is actually the next book that I'm working on that dives into this a little bit more, although I do talk about it in Human, which is why do people want to share? What, where, when, how, and why? Because again, we are sharing. It's the humans that are sharing. Even when you see brands share, it's a human that actually shared that. So, and as I mentioned in the book, Brands don't have emotions. People do. So whoever it is that you're talking to, whatever it is that you're doing, however it is that you're communicating just like, again, you said here on this podcast, we're doing it as people, we're doing it as humans. So for us to now take a look at what makes a shared experience exciting, that's pretty fascinating. I think that we could learn a lot from each other in seeing why things spread. Why do good viruses, grow? What is it that makes people want to share different things? And one of the things I talk about in the book is the human sensory building, how to create something for everyone in a different sense. Like some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, some people are a combination of both. Other than smelling, and I'm sure that's coming soon on social media. Every other sense is there. Yes. We can create a little bit of something for everyone, and you never know what somebody is, what their preference is in the sensory aspect until you start testing, until you start putting out content in those different areas, and then you measure it and you see how you got the response. And if in a certain situation, whether it's physical or online, you know how that sense did, and you can repeat it. So we are in a test and fail atmosphere where we can take things like sensory building and social context and crowds and combine all three of those. When you start to build layers on top of each of them and testing and failing and testing and failing, you're going to come up with a mix that works for you. And I think that that's really the key out of the book, is how do you create human experiences through these different sensory buildings and contextual area, in the contextual area.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned, or maybe I saw it tweeted about the visual is really, and it's kind of like a trend coming down the pike. It's not coming down, it is here, that that we're more visually. We share more of the social media content that's visual. We spend more time on site with the visual, be it infographics, images with text transposed on top. So totally. But your assertion is to find out what your particular audience is interested in, how they consume, and to test the different platforms and different sensory contexts. Correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, the real point of human to human is that we're starting to automate everything. We're trying to automate everything. And you talked about the critics before, and the downside to that, or the interesting fact is that I actually agree with them, most of them anyway, that they are saying that what they're interpreting is that I'm saying there's no more B2B or B2C process. Mm-hmm. That the process within that infrastructure of each of those different companies, does not exist anymore. That is not what I'm trying to say. A process and a cultural footprint exists within every company that's totally unique from the next, and it is a little bit different in what you would call the traditional B2B or B2C, and I'm not touching upon that. What I'm talking about is how we communicate to our customer and how we communicate to our potential customer, and how complex we're making it with these automation tools, and how less robotic we need to sound. A lot of the emails that you and I are getting right now sound so robotic, I doubt we're reading very many of them. We're probably deleting them before they have a chance to even be opened, because of the type of email that it's coming from and who it's coming from. The thing that we will always email is an email from a friend, and an email from a coworker, and an email from a client. But when you're talking about somebody who's new to to your world, you really have to earn that trust. And not to be cliche, but trust is one of the major factors in what we're talking about here. And how you earn that trust is by being human. It's embracing your humanness, if that should be a word.
I love that.
And actually building that into your marketing.
Yes. Totally agree. And I like how you so eloquently put the book seems to be resonating well with everyone. So, and I did your Amazon ratings are 99.9%, 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, I think you're touching the human hearts out there for sure.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, man, it's good stuff. So you're a successful businessman. You're in the heart of Silicon Valley. You're a mover and shaker in the industry. How does Bryan Kramer keep it all together? What's your keep your mindset, your productivity, accountability? What keeps you moving forward, Bryan?
I get bored very easily, and a lot of things that I do, I can't just sit still. So I'm not a person who can sit at a desk 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day. I can't even barely sit 1 hour a day. I really am somebody who likes to move around, and because of that, I end up speaking 30 to 40 times a year and traveling a lot. I'll be in Sydney and Paris and Germany, and was just in Singapore, and I'll be in about 20 different cities in the next 4 months in the United States, and it really kind of shakes things up for me so that I can start to move around a little bit and meet new people, which is really what I love to do. So when I'm meeting new people, I'm getting their positive energy and feeling like, I'm learning from them. Hopefully they're learning from me, and we're getting to be in exchange for what we're, all about. And the other side of your question is that I love wine. I love wine, and wine keeps me very, kind of well lubricated in the evening. So, being with my family and my wife and my 2 kids is just a blast. And so like this weekend, we just had 2 days of no working and lots of fun. And, outside was just a pleasure. So, it's just really kind of you can't really call it a balance, because I never know when I'm going to do what, but I love the quality time of each of those different situations. Mm-hmm. And when I get into them, I really kind of like just enjoy it for the moment that I have.
I love it. You're working hard and you're playing hard.
Yeah, totally.
Good for you. And it's envious. How about business resources? I'm just kind of trying to pick your brain about, where you come from a foundation. Any decent, good books that you really get inspiration from, or?
Good books that I get inspiration from. It's interesting because I have an author's podcast as well.
Yes.
And my podcast is about helping authors, both new and old authors. And I have so many books that I'm not sure I could actually just point one out for the sake of saying that, I love every author that I have on the podcast. Sure. I can tell you that the last maybe 2 authors that I had on the show were really interesting. The last one that I had was Sebastian Rusk, and he's talking about how the title's kind of funny. It's Social Media Sucks unless you do it right. So, and that's true. I mean, what's what we're talking about here, and how we're saying that it's about relationships. It's not about one-way communication, and so that's kind of cool. And then the other one is The New Rules of Customer Engagement by Daniel Newman, and he's an interesting entrepreneur because he took over his dad's business and became CEO at a very young age as a millennial, and he wrote about his experience of being a millennial CEO and what that means today. But man, there's so many great books out there that I mean, those are just the latest 2 I saw.
Maybe not a fair question for you. I'm sorry to throw you a fastball, a curveball. No. There's no right or wrong answer, and I appreciate it. But I'm finding your podcast at bryankramer.com. It's awesome. The author's point of view.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So I started it before I started the book H2H, and it really was just an idea that I had about meeting authors. I wanted to understand what process they go through, and now it's become a little bit more about helping them to help market their book. And so I enjoy, just kind of focusing on both their process and who they are, but also what's their book about and how can it help people. So, it's just kind of a fun thing that I do.
That's great. What started out to be kind of a just investigative ended up being a passion for you. That's awesome.
Totally. Isn't everything that way?
Yeah, you're right. Touche, my friend. Touche. Well, I think I saw Joe Polizzi on there too. Did you interview Joe for his Epic Content Marketing?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I think he was my second guest.
Yeah, I love him. He's such a fantastic human being.
Cool guy, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. All right. Well, we wrap it up, but can you tell us about anything that's going on? You hinted about a new book and like where we can find Bryan Kramer.
Yeah. So the book Human to Human can be found at bryankramer.com. and I'm on Twitter at Bryan Kramer. I'm on Facebook at Bryan Kramer. So pretty much everywhere you can connect with me at Bryan Kramer. And I've got, like I mentioned before, I've got a podcast. I've also got a video series that I do with C-level executives. Actually, tomorrow I'll be interviewing the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Cisco Worldwide, Blair Christie, so that'll be fun. And I've got a whole bunch of content on Bryan Kramer as well as purematter.com and the books on there as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, Bryan, you've been really generous with your time today, and I really appreciate you coming out, and we look forward to the new book. Does it have a title?
I haven't released it yet.
That's okay.
It does, but as soon as I've only just even started talking about it. But as soon as I release it, I will post it up and let you know.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. You take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Bryan. Take care now.
Cheers.
All right. I hope you enjoyed our chat today with Mr. Bryan Kramer. Please visit Bryan at purematter.com or at bryankramer.com. You can find the show notes and highlights of this interview at bigvaluebigbusiness.com/episode 21. Or just go to bigvaluebigbusiness.com and type Bryan, that's Bryan, into the search box for easy access. Hey, while you're on the site, I'd be extremely honored if you would sign up to become part of the Big Value Big Business family. You'll receive via email weekly updates and highlights of every new podcast that I launch, and you can decide at that time if you want to download each new episode and have a listen. Also, when you do sign up at bigvaluebigbusiness.com, you will get a really cool free gift. I've put together an awesome online business toolbox that has a ton of free internet tools and resources to help you build and grow your online business. So head on over to bigvaluebigbusiness.com and sign up right at the top of the site. Also, did you know you can also listen to the show on iTunes? If you listen with your iPod or iPhone, it would be awesome if you would subscribe to the show on iTunes. And as always, a review on iTunes is very, very much appreciated. When you leave a review on iTunes about the podcast, it helps us put the show in front of more people. So if you do use iTunes, please subscribe and leave a review if you are so inclined. And lastly, as always, I really hope we brought some big value into your day today. You take care, and I'll be talking to you again real soon.
Thanks for listening to the Big Value Big Business Podcast at www.bigvaluebigbusiness.com.